My name is Isaac Hill. I'll be the MC today. And our first speaker will be Bob Fergeson. He is the author of The Listening Attention, which just came out. And he provided the images to the Images of Essence with Sean. So be sure to pick those up if you find his discussion thought-provoking. He started coming around TAT in the early 90s, and he had his experience in around 2000. He lives in Colorado now, and he's going to talk to you about the dance of death. So, Bob Fergeson.
No, that's fine. All right. Well, good morning, folks. Good to see you all here. A lot of old familiar faces, too. Good to see some of these guys up on the railing up here. See some of the old TAT members. I know quite a few of y'all from here from TAT meetings and stuff over the years, and some of you have only met online. I've also got those websites, Mystic Missile with a little newsletter that comes out sometimes, and also the Listening Attention site, which is basically where the Listening Attention book material came off of. And good to see a lot of y'all that I've never placed faces to. I've seen some of the people who come in here today, like Phil behind the camera there. I'd like to talk to y'all today about this little dance with truth here, and why I think this kind of stuff might be important. That is mainly going to be about negative emotional blocks that cause us to not have a clear mind when we're getting into the stuff on the path. I don't want to talk much about the end game, about enlightenment and stuff, but more about what's keeping you from it. What can we do to clear out the obstacles we've got that can get in the way when we want to do some kind of spiritual work? You hear a lot of stuff online that says we are what we become, but we don't know that. You can hear somebody say we are what we become, so there's nothing to be done, but if that was that easy, why would we be here? What are we going to be doing? How can we get back to our true state, you might say? You could say that we were born to dance, the stage is set, the music is rehearsed, but we don't have to be lost in the dance. We don't have to forget it's just a dance, that it's a play, a dream. And why is this complete identification with the individual? Well, we can wake up in the dance, maybe change our partner teacher from that of desire and truth, desire and fear, change it over to maybe dancing with the truth a bit. Maybe we can change the music a little bit too. We've got to the dance, change our tune, and then eventually, suddenly, disappear, waking up from the dance dream, but allowing the dance to continue, maybe forever, maybe not at all. To leave the theater, this identification with a particular dancer, we must first learn our dance and find out what our blocks and stumbles are. I started thinking about why talk about what you might call psychological work, because of a lot of what you might say is too easy advice online. You can get just about anybody can throw up a WordPress blog, get a bunch of stuff up online, and give you some neo-Advaita advice up there, but I found it doesn't maybe really stick. There could be a lot of differences up there and confusion between, say, action and awareness, the eventuality of trying to hang on to one side of a dualistic mood, such as bliss and sorrow. And why doesn't easy advice online last? Why doesn't it give us what we want? Also, why might we have trouble with direct methods of inquiry, with direct mind techniques we might be trying? If these methods aren't understood, if you can't get hearting experiments or you're trying meditations and you find that you're coming back to repetitive thoughts, you can't seem to get a habit pattern with it, why is that? Mr. Rose, who is the founder of TAT and who's started a lot of the, these buildings and things up here, has a lot of quotes I'd like to get into today, and one of them has something to do with this. He says that the blueprint has been made and all die is cast. The program for each robot is cast also. All that man can attain is a knowledge of his true nature and some restricted ability to affect things which are not really real, meaning mental projections in which we believe. That's what I'd like to talk about, are those mental projections that we throw out there, things we believe in, might not even know about them, which serve as blocks and obstacles to us finding out who we really are. Now, if we want to dance with the truth, there's two kinds of dancing we end up finding out we're doing. We start out maybe with little t truth, finding out, why do I want to dance with the truth? Well, it's because I'm miserable, because I'm suffering in my life. Things are not right. We call these little t truths. Then you might clear things up a little bit and maybe have a better understanding of it and want to dance with what you call big T truth. Who am I? What's going on here? The old question we used to ask in college, maybe with a little too many drugs in us, what is reality? You can start dancing with more of the big T truth. I found that there's two main steps to this dancing with the truth I like to talk about that go hand in hand. They go like this, and they're partners. Each one helps the other one out as you go along. The first one is working to clear out the mind, ridding it of what I call energy knots that cause maybe unconscious emotional motivations. Now, there is a current coming from above. We can talk about it a lot of different ways. Rose has it down on his chart up there. In AA, we called it higher power. You could call it even manifesting as insight and intuition. But this comes through and gets received by us in a calm, clear mind. How do we go about getting this calm, clear mind and receiving and hearing these messages that are always coming? And also, tying in with the TAT weekend, how do we find out maybe what our longings in the heart are? What's going on down in there? Can you even get in touch with that? We might call this psychological work, trying to get the blocks out of the way, learning the steps to the dance. And we can smooth our clunky moves and our stumbles, our constant spinning around in the wrong direction on the dance floor, bumping off the walls, not even admitting it, maybe not even knowing it. And this clearing of the mind I found to be is an automatic function of a healthy mind. If you just let the mind do its job, it can clear out a lot of this stuff on its own, as long as you're not identified with the process. Now, the ego, usually thinking that it's the little clever devil that it is, either wants to sidestep all psychological work and just say, oh, I'm just going to go right in there, enlightenment today, or else it wants to get in there and micromanage everything and turn you into some kind of perfectionist who's going to get better and better until your sainthood comes around. There was a friend of mine, Dr. Ron, who used to say, we don't want to get better and better. That's what everybody else wants to do. He said, when are you going to finally get well? So to get well, I think these negative blocks can be removed to the point where we can hear our insight, intuition. I'd like to give you an example of this. When I first started getting into dream work and spiritual work in general, I was into a lot of the Gurdjieffians. And they describe man as having three parts, like a three-story house. The bottom floor, you could call the mechanical man, the instinctive center. The middle floor, usually where the trouble is the emotional state. The upper floor, you could call that the mental center. And I was having this dream one night where this was all laid out for me. I was talking to a real estate agent, and he said, we were looking at a house, and I had just bought it and realized this, and he was showing me the house. He was going to give me a tour of it. And he said, now the bottom floor is okay. You don't need to do any work on that at all. The top floor is fine too. This is okay. But we've got a problem here on the middle floor because it's haunted. I'm thinking, oh boy, I'm moving into this place, and here we go, and the second floor is haunted, So he takes me upstairs and we go into the second floor, walk into a dark hallway and the doors are all shut. Everything's kind of dim, dusty. And he says, now the problem with this place in here is that there's ghosts. And what you got to do to deal with these ghosts, and of course here comes one now, walking down the hallway, is he says you've got to take these golden spears. Poof, he's got a big golden spear in his hand. And you take it and you throw it through the ghost. And poof, there goes the ghost, goes away. I'm like, that's pretty cool, I got to figure this thing out. And later on, when I woke up and was looking at the dream, I realized he was talking about, in the dream thing, that these were flashes of what you might call consciousness, or understanding or comprehension. If you face up to the ghosts in that emotional level, bring them up where you can see them, then it takes their power away. These little golden spears are just a flash of understanding, seeing both sides of whatever these emotional knots might be. Maurice Nicole, another Gurdjieffian, has a quote on removing these energy knots, in a sense. He says that objective consciousness is attained when the memory is cleared of the subjective element. Now notice he doesn't say you clear your memory. He says you clear your memory of the subjective element. This is a little less self, you might say. Take that out of the memory, and you've got a closer shot at objective consciousness. That's the first thing I'll talk about, which is working to clear the mind of those energy knots. The second thing, which is necessary to have in tandem with this, is to build a direction. You've got to have an aim or a question. You've got to have that kept in mind all the time, and this question arises up out of the heart. So to better hear the heart, find out what your question is, you can clear the mind out, get a better idea. When the mind is calm and clear, then we need this direction or question. What is our question? We can draw a question up out of the unknown, up out of our heart, from our deepest longings. We can reach down into these dark depths down there we might not be familiar with and pull forth these deepest longings out of within. And the strange thing about this is where the answer is going to come from too. And pull that out of the same dark unknown. The strange thing about this question too, is deep emotion you might feel, is it can change over the years. This is that little T-truth thing again. You might start out going, I'm going straight for enlightenment. And then realize that for some reason or other, you can't hold a straight line. Things aren't going good for you in this, and you got to figure out, what's that problem? So your little question might turn over to, why am I upset in certain situations and can't do this? So your question might have to turn to that, figure that out, then you can pop back to the big question again. It changes it around. Clear the mind, we can get into that kind of thing. Can transcend our emotional dissonance. I'd like to do a personal example of this. Is when I first got into this work and started realizing that I did have an aim or a question, it wasn't very verbalized. What I had inside of me was like a negative pressure, like a vacuum in the heart. And it seemed like this vacuum or this negative pressure was something that needed to be filled. And because of the negative pressure of the vacuum, it would pull the answer toward it. Now the definition or the shape of this vacuum had to match the question. So if the shape of the vacuum changes a little bit, then it pulls in the similar answer in order to fulfill that need inside. And psychological work can help smooth this dance with the truth, enable us to look and see directly, without projections. And to start explaining that, I came across something recently I call the ringing of shadows. This happens in the dance. This is music. The music of our dance, usually by the time we reach physical maturity and go through the little personal hells of adolescence, we may start hearing a ringing dissonance coming out of our music. Things aren't going all that great anymore, maybe. Down in this unseen country you've got down inside your heart, you might have buried emotional reactions to bad events, a negative feeling the events generated at the time, and then we had to send them into exile. We couldn't face up to these things at the time they might have happened. We were too busy, didn't know we should do this. So it just kind of stuffed all these things, but they're still sending out a message there. This ringing coming up from the Shadowlands. keeps us spinning in circles. We may think we're finding the truth, but it may only be in the intellect. We may not be able to get anything that holds for very long. You can find this out for yourself simply by watching, what are my daydreams all day? What's my fantasies? What are my dreams in dreamland? What are the repetitive things going on? If you like to sit in meditation, what does your mind turn back towards? You can look at this in your relations to your family and friends. That's why psychological work, I think, is necessary to clear out this ringing from the Shadowlands, and also so that we can pick up another song. There's other music coming down out of the current, might call insight and intuition. A little bit more subtle music we might be able to hear if we can get this dissonance out of the way. Rose has a great quote off the video, the Mr. Rose video. I don't know if any of you haven't seen it. I highly recommend it. It gives you a real feel for the guy that started all this. It gives you a real example of his character and what he was like. But off that video, he's got a little quote that sums this all up pretty good with, "The things that are holding you up personally are the negative things that have happened to you." Pretty darn easy there. Whatever you've had that's been a bad traumatic event, these are the things that are starting all the blocks and obstacles in there. It's another guy Rose thought highly of and recommended that book of his, Magic, White, and Black. Franz Hartmann was from another time. He was a theosophist, I think. He says that no man can show to another the light if the latter is incapable to see it himself. But the light is everywhere. There is nothing to hinder a person to see it except for his love of the darkness. This sums the whole thing up. You can't see the light if you're incapable of it, but the light is everywhere. This is the we are what we become. There's nothing to be done. The light's there. You don't have to turn it on, but how are you going to find it? How are you going to get capable of seeing it? It's our love for the darkness. It's our love for those things that we keep back in the Shadowlands we won't face. You could just say it's a kind of like a negative self-love we've got in there that keeps us rooted in that. I like to use this little diagram that Rose has got here. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. I just want to go over a really brief explanation for people who might not know much about it. We've got the bottom line down there under where spectrum is, and it proceeds on up into the absolute in different stages there. You could call that bottom line desire and fear on one side, and on the other, desire on one side, fear on the other side. I like to call it on one side, I want what I want, and on the other side, I don't want what I don't want. It reminds me of the little Cartman character on South Park. He gets up there and goes, whatever, I do what I want. This little section down here is usually where all our problems get started and where we've got to work. Up at the top, you've got our individual essence, maybe. You can talk about that up top. Now, the essence is in touch with absolute truth up top. It doesn't have any negative parts in it. Any negative parts we have come from the bottom line. They're not innate to us. In other words, our essence doesn't have these negative energy knots. We pick them up from the mess that we end up starting on the bottom with the I want what I want, and I don't want what I don't want. We misidentify these and lose that direct connection to the top part. And we need the psychological work to get back up to the innocent parts. You might call the little children up there. Also on the bottom line, you've got what you might call the social self. And the social self's got so much noise going on every day from all the defense mechanisms getting through life, it can't hear anything from the higher power coming down through this. So a lot of times spending time alone, letting that thing die off. So maybe that social self-defenses go away for a little bit. You might can get in touch with something a little better. And also the social self not being real, can't see anything directly. Get in touch with that. You've got to get a little higher up on there. Social self, the personality, can't ever be fixed or modified, upgraded in order enough to make it enlightened. It's just got to be transcended. Now you notice I'm not talking much about enlightenment and describing oneness and bliss. These things are already pleasant, or present, pleasant too. But you don't know it. What you need to do is remove the blocks, and these will come to light on their own. If you've got that question, then do the work. In the end, you'll see that they were already there. You're always what you become, but you don't see that until you get there. And too much dwelling on descriptions, I think, like online with oneness and awareness and bliss and stuff, just ends up projecting a fantasy world to you in your mind. It produces a hypnotic state, which is similar to the one that we need to get rid of. We've got a hypnotic state or a belief that I'm not enlightened. So you don't want to stick another one, a concept on top of that and go, well, now I'll just stuff another one on top and say I am enlightened. We got to get down in there and take them all out rather than just keep putting more on top of it. I'll give you some examples, little stories here about what I'm talking about with negative energy knots and just how simple and insidious in day-to-day life these things can get to be. When I first was here on the farm and then later on moved back to Colorado, I'd had a fly fishing shop there with a friend of mine, Pete, and he held on to it. And when I went back, he offered me a job there, which was nice because it gave me something to do when I got back into the state in Colorado and, get me back on my feet again. And he decided to start a guide service too. And he said, you want to work for me with that? We can make some extra money out there on the water guiding. I said, sure. And he said, there's also a stretch of water on the new ELM River opening up over here. And I want you to get out there and learn this water. It's going to be our moneymaker when we get on this thing when the season starts. I didn't have any good equipment. So he says, I'll get you a new graphite rod and you can, equipment, you can pay me back out of the money that you make. And it was real nice of him to get me going again. So I take off in my truck, get out to this new stretch of water at the trailhead, set my new expensive rig up, lean it up against the back of the truck, go to close the tailgate, fly rod falls into the crack, and I blew that baby into a bunch of graphite splinters. And I'm standing there staring at this busted up rod on my first day on the job and standing there going, oh my Lord. And what happens, First, thing that pops into my head is, this is an omen. This is a bad omen. This is bad gree-gree. We're not going to be able to do this. This is to show you that you shouldn't have made this decision. You should get out of here. Don't be a fly fishing guide. Don't get on this stretch of river. We're going to save you here. So, I said, oh no, and my head's hanging down. I get back to the fly shop with Pete and, tell him about this. And he gets this funny look on his face. He's looking at me like, what's this guy up to, And he says, that's not a big deal, Bob. I'll get you a new rod. We'll figure it out. I need you on the water. Get back out there and go to work, And then after I think about it a little while, I'm going, yeah, he's right. What the heck was that black cloud that popped into my head? And I said, and I forgot my aim. Where's my question, my direction here? I got to keep that on track to keep me, level through this kind of stuff. I'm supposed to be looking for the truth, and I can't handle busted fly rod. I'm here sitting here talking about bad gree-gree. What am I going to do? So if you have that question in there, it can keep your compass, pointed in the right direction, a good keel for you. Same time I was back there, I just moved into a little apartment there and wasn't much any furniture, and I'd gotten it into my head I wanted to start artwork. I wanted to do something, artistic. I didn't know exactly what, but I always had the hankering for it. And I also thought it would be a good way to get dream images and things in my mind up and get them out, manifest, where I could look at them. I could draw these things out if I couldn't verbalize them. And I thought, this would be a good thing to do. I want to try it. So I thought, I'll try watercoloring and charcoal drawing. That'd be pretty easy to start. So I went down to the city and bought a real nice fancy pad of heavy watercolor paper. I set it down on the floor of the apartment. I didn't have any furniture or anything. And I was working on the Venetian blinds. The whole thing came loose, came down, crashed on the floor, and poked a hole right through that art pan. So what do you think happens? Bad gree-gree, baby, We can't do artwork. Here's the omen. Dump this stuff. You're going down the wrong path, where you don't have anything to do with this. It could be a disaster. And I'm, I guess, and I'm talking to my neighbor a while later and tell her about this, and she gets that same look on her face that Pete got, and looking at me like, what is this guy doing? A couple of days later, she comes by with a paper bag and hands it to me and says, you need to get back to work. And I pull it out, and there's another pad of art paper. And I'm like, thank God for friends, what a wonderful thing. If it wasn't for those two people, I'd probably be still sitting there on the bank of the river going, oh no, what am I going to do? And the artwork was a wonderful thing. I can't believe I was thinking of bombing out of it, that early on. You know, it led me into photography. It's a great way to communicate. You know, good thing friends can come around and snap you out of these bad emotional blocks. It also shows that maybe a little T-truth is in order sometimes. You know, there's a good example. Maybe I need to work on why do I have fear of failure, fear of success, fear of responsibility, and I'm supposed to be going for enlightenment. You know, and I can't even get through a $10 pad of art pad paper without flipping out. Rose also has got another quote that in that time frame, I used to look at this quote and think there's a heck of a lot of meaning in this, but I hate it at the same time. You know, a lot of his stuff was like that. You know, Mr. Rose, why do you tell us things like this? But he said, I used to write this down on bookmarks and everything, so I keep it in front of my face. And it said, if you feel the need for entertainment or escape, you are asleep. And to me, that's, Mr. Rose, I'm asleep 24/7. When do I not feel the need for entertainment or escape? And that brought me around to the second half, which says, why do I want to be asleep all the time? What is the need? Why do I feel the need for entertainment or escape, distraction, to run and hide? I obviously want to be asleep. Why do I want to be asleep? Well, stay away from these bad energy knots that are down in there lurking around. You don't want to have to look at this stuff. It's easier to hang out on the internet, watch movies, do whatever it is you do to stay away from yourself. So getting in there and looking at what's going on down inside, it might not be pleasant, having to look at this little cartoon character that we all are and get a better feel for it. You know, is it really that bad that I had to stay asleep all the time and hide from this ringing of the shadows, sticking our heads in the sand? This reminded me of when you're a little kid and your brother or your sisters are driving you crazy and you're going, you don't want to hear them. This is just what this is kind of like. You know, I don't want to see what that character Bob's up to. He's nuts. I want to stay away from him. Rose would talk about a lot, too, about, he'd say that we're better projectors than observers. And this used to drive me nuts, too. You know, what do you mean, Mr. Rose? There's my hand. You know, there's Bob Sergel up there. What the heck? I can see pretty darn good. I'm observing. What's this projection stuff? Over the years, you get a little better handle on it and see how the projection works. With the bad gree from the fly fishing thing, you know, you can see the projection coming through on there. It's just a mood. It comes through pretty hard. But I found out later on that you can have projections that are actually physical things you're doing to yourself that you can't see. Gives you a good idea how the mind can actually work in this man. The guy just exuded capability. And the guy was so capable. And I loved working with him because of that. It's like he just had this feeling, no matter what he did, he was complete confidence with it. And it used to bug me and make me jealous. I'm looking, you know, at the guy, what the heck's going on with him? And it occurred to me one day that I want that. You know, I want that capability, that feeling that guy's got. And I've got it inside, but I won't allow it. I won't allow me. It doesn't fit in with my projection of the kind of person I am. I can't be capable. That's not Bob. But I could see it in this other guy. And that little nagging thing about why is this bothering me was a clue about what the heck is going on here. There's another projection. You know, we can pick up on people and see what the heck's going on inside of our head. Get back to Rose's little enigma here, on his little chart up there. When we were we were out here working on the farm with Mr. Rose. A lot of times it wasn't all that much what you'd call pleasant or fun. We were out here freezing to death, no running water, and going, Mr. Rose, what do we do? And I'd be looking up at this chart or reading about it in the book, and I'd get the idea in my head, and I think a lot of us do when we get into this work, is I am up on the top up there. Boy, I got 1 foot on either side of that top pyramid, just waiting to jump off in the absolute. And if Mr. Rose would only tell me what to do exactly and tell me what's going on, then I could dive off into the nowhere and all my problems are solved. And of course then, you know, we're sitting in here talking about Rose, something, he's explaining something about the chart. And I realize that he keeps talking about that bottom line. And going, this is where you need to be working. down here on this bottom line, this mess in the world. You know, I don't want this, I do want that. That's where all your troubles are. If you'll just deal with that bottom line, everything else will come into focus and automatically. You'll get up to the top. Of course, it's no, Mr. Rose, no. I'm up on the top, baby. I'm up there on the top, teetering on the edge. I'm ready for you to tell me what to do, and then I can fall off. Of course, he's right. Came to see, you know, sooner or later that the problems are down on the bottom. He showed, you know, how I needed to deal with that baseline. Everything would fall into place. Rose calls the umpire there, automatic functioning, could be allowed to work, and you could transcend up above them. But I didn't want to be on the bottom line and have to work. I wanted to be up there on the top, using that higher power, or the absolute, almost like a utility. A mistake we can all make, too, we can be on that bottom line and thinking, you know, the stuff up there is just going to be something that's going to get me what I want. I can take this stuff on the absolute, use it as a utility, and it can hide me from my fears and give me all my desires. We can get into that utility thing, and we can also interfere with the natural functioning of our mind and our heart. It was implicit in that chart. By second-guessing things, forcing other things, suppressing things. Moving up that ladder isn't by killing off everything that's on each rung and erasing it until you have nothing left but the top. It's about transcending it. You move up and everything below you on the bottom line keeps on going. It's all automatic and it's not your problem anymore in a sense. You're not trying to, you know, just take some white out and block the whole bottom thing out of it. You disidentify with it, let it do its moves, let it perform its functions. I saw something that really clicked with me in terms of another type of block or obstacle back when the Harding stuff started coming around through TAT and people were getting into the Harding experiments. And I saw this was another little icon on our altars of projection we can use. I used to have dreams about I was walking in a field and there would be all these little altars like fireplace mantles set up in the field, and all the little things that I was attached to were little icons on the altars, and I had to go up and pray in front of them, you know, oh Lord, help me to keep this little ego alive, and that one over there. Keep all this stuff up front and moving for me. And another one I found was how the ego can come through and steal any instance or attempt at direct looking and nip it in the bud for us. When I saw people doing Harding exercises, and I saw this happen in my own mind, was you'd pick up on it for the first time, get something out of it, and then somehow or another use that experience memory as a sort of a replacement for it, having to do it in real time. So you never had to do it again. Been there, done that kind of a thing with the ego. So instead of practicing these meditations, practicing Harding experiments, you just had a reference point in there for it. Been there, done that, I know all about that. I saw how this holding this picture feeling experience memory up in your head, then projecting it, seeing it, and fooling ourselves back into thinking it's actually in a direct experience again. This is that silly projection functions. It's an unseen function of the ego mind where we can only be aware of the end result composite image of the projection. We don't see the process coming through. We just take it all for granted. Until we see this in action in ourselves, we're always one step behind. We're looking at something that's been manufactured in space and time and taking that to be the present moment. This cuts out any chance of making any progress in what you might call direct mind, direct looking. It's all a function of pretty much the ego mind, and Rose said that to generate anything above the mental capacities, we must remove the ego. We want to get out of the thinking and stuck in concepts. The ego's got to get removed a little bit. Now, this may sound a little complicated, or this projection stuff and how you can pull an experience memory up and sub it for a direct looking experience, but if this wasn't a true fact, Hollywood would go out of business. They make their money by substituting experience images for real-time life. We go and see a movie, we go and see action, adventure, a horror movie, a little romance movie. We have the same reactions that we would have in real time. You can see this watching TV. You watch TV and your body reacts to what's going on the TV in the same way it would be in a real situation. And if this wasn't true, we wouldn't have the average American watching 4.5 hours of TV every day. It works. It substitutes a form of real life for the ego functions. And they get fulfilled by this. I saw a quote Eckhart Tolle had on one of, it's a transcript from one of his Oprah webcasts, I think, that kind of explains it pretty good. He says that although the body is very intelligent, it cannot tell the difference between an actual situation and a thought. It reacts to every thought as if it were a reality. It just doesn't know it's a thought. To the body, a worrisome, fearful thought means I'm in danger, and it responds accordingly. There's a buildup of energy, but since the danger is only a mental fiction, the energy has no outlet. So we have a bad emotional trauma years ago. We get into a similar situation. The body responds somewhat similarly, has the same energy reaction that we had years ago, but since the situation isn't really there, that energy goes into keeping that emotional energy not alive. And this happens all our lives, and these things just keep running. It provides a certain strange fulfillment to us that kind of substitutes for any kind of direct mind experience we might have had a long time ago and forgot about. An example of how the body can be fooled is exactly how we're fooled emotionally by the ego's need to be right. The ego sees these movies and things and thinks that it's actually in there and it understands them. Conceptually, it's the same thing to it if it actually had the experience. It can't tell the difference between a concept and a percept. Just like the body example, it can be fulfilled with these conceptual image pictures. Tolle refers in that webcast too that the emotional aspect of the ego is what he calls the pain body. And that's kind of what I've been talking about. It's removing the energy that keeps these things alive in us. And to remove them through understanding and disidentifying with them. We don't have to get in there and dig out all the little gory details with these things. We've just got to see how that pattern works in us. Why do we keep these things alive? How come we can't tell the difference between something that's happening right now and something that's going on in the past? I can give you all a little example here. I know a heck of a lot of you have probably done hearting experiments before. You might know what I'm talking about with it. One of his simple ones is just the finger pointing one. These are done, you want to do these things without any conceived notions, present time, no inference, no associations with it. But you can take your finger and point at things. You can see Bart up there. You can see the bell. But then a really weird thing can happen if you take the finger and do this. Now, what am I looking at now if I'm looking at what the finger's pointing at? Well, I'm looking at what I'm looking out of. I'm looking back at the real me. If this clicks for you for a second or two, you can get the sense of this. You can see what you're looking out of. You can get maybe what the Gurdjieffs call a little moment of self-remembering. It can put you into what I call a listening attention. And you can get a little glimpse of yourself here. It's a totally different kind of an experience. But the ego can take that and go, wow, that was really cool. I know how to do that now. I don't have to do that anymore. And then when people talk about it, I can talk with them about it. I can even go teach it. I can do anything I want with this except have to go back and do it again or figure out how to do it in other ways. What does that mean? How do I get back to a direct mind experience in my day-to-day life? Well, I don't have to. I can be fulfilled through the ego now. And if we don't see this, it can really stop people in their tracks. I wrote a little paper called The Gap of Time, I think, to try to explain that, how it keeps you in the past and the future. You're always at split second that that projection mechanism takes to perform its function. You're that much away from yourself all the time. So you're never there. You're always just boom, 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 right down the line. One step behind or ahead of yourself. we got to get around these little ego projection tricks if we want to get successful at going within or direct looking. It takes a lot, I think, a lot of work at how we, hypnotize ourselves and get all caught up in this stuff. There's a little work we can do. Rose is big on hypnosis. And there's a guy out in, I think he's in Oregon somewhere. His name is Roy Masters. He's been around for a long time. Comes kind of from a Christian orientation. I think he's got some pretty helpful meditation techniques, and he's done a lot of good. He had a long life, and when he got into working, when he started out, he wanted to be a hypnotist. He wanted to help people, say hypnotize them, and had a little business, and he was going to help them stop smoking, stop drinking, things like this. He said a funny thing happened after a while. He's starting to get a handle on what was going on with people, was when they were coming in, they didn't need to be hypnotized. They needed to be dehypnotized. They didn't need to come in and learn how to stop smoking. They had to learn how to not believe they had to smoke. So he thought that, what we need to do is clear out the hypnosis we're already stuck with. And it may sound, oh, that's no big deal. I can deal with that. But, oh, my Lord, when I was back in my drinking days and was trying to get sober, one of the hardest things in the world was for me to even have a conceptual idea about what getting through a day without a drink was like. I absolutely believed I could not do it. It was not a possibility. That was a belief, a hypnosis that was in there. It was actually pretty easy, but it would just seem this huge mental block that was in there that had to be removed. It was something I was buying into. Masters does some little meditation techniques, which I think are fairly similar to some of the TM stuff that works pretty good. He uses a hand-raising technique, which I've always found is a lot better than having a mantra just for me, because the mantra's in my head to want to change, jump around, I'd forget it, but my hand was always there. Another thing that gets into us that we can have for an obstacle in the work is really a strange, subtle thing. I've had a hard time figuring out how to explain it, is states of mind. Rose talked a lot about this. For me, one of the first clues to what a state of mind was when I grew up in my family circle down in a little town in Louisiana. The Valhalla of life, the goal to get to, and to get when you were a kid, to get out of school, and to get what you could do, was to be an adult, get to be over 18, have your own house, and then you could get drunk whenever you wanted. That was what adults did. I thought you grow up, you get a job, and you can come home and get drunk, and nobody can tell you can't. This is going to be a lot of fun. That's what I thought all the kids were going to grow up and do this. That was what everybody I knew did. That was what life was about. So I go off to college and hanging out with different groups of people, and I got a real shock. I realized there were actually people out there who didn't think like that. These people had other ideas of what you do with life. Wow, you can have a career, you can raise kids, and they're not just a side thing that happened as an accident on your way to getting drunk. They were actually something you might be interested in. This was, a state of mind that I had, and it couldn't be seen or even questioned until there was other people with different ones around to bump into. We'll see how this happens. You can see these things from your family life. You change jobs, you might see a heck of a different state of mind. But they're almost invisible and keep us stuck in a rut, and we can't get a handle on that there is such a thing as a state of mind, and we can get stuck in it. One good thing, too, you can see is a real lucky glimpse you can get if you happen to get in between states of mind. I think Art was talking about this one time when he moved from one lifestyle job to another, but he wasn't invested in either one yet. So in between, or maybe on a road trip or a vacation in between these things, you can see the states of mind. You can see that you don't have one right then, that you're going to get lost in one real quick when you get to the new place, and you can kind of see what the old one is like. And you're kind of wistful, thinking, oh yes, I used to have a nice safe trap back there I was in. Some other things too that are pretty simple. So over the years, blocks, little obstacles to us. Simple things like worry and anxiety. When I was trying to get into rehab and get sober, the state of Colorado had a law requirement for you to get into any of their state-funded programs, you had to have a complete physical before they would allow you into the free stuff. So it was pretty expensive to have this complete workup. And there was a really great doctor there in Boulder. His name was Dr. Weber, and I kept going to him until he finally retired. And this guy would do these physicals for free or for a cut rate for the drunks to help people out, to get them over that hump and get you in there. That's how I ended up meeting him. And this guy was just an amazing doctor. I noticed that whenever I'd have something wrong with me, and I was all worried about it, and would go in to see Dr. Weber, that he would cure me simply by talking to me. I would be a different person going in and a different person coming out. And this puzzled me for a long time until I realized that this was a perfect case of hypochondria. I'm sure he knew exactly what he was doing, to be able to cure me like this. But he would actually spend time with you too. He would solve problems by having the two of you stay an hour with him, unheard of with doctors sometimes, and be in there with him for an hour, and we'd work through the problem. I came in there with back pains. I was doing a lot of hiking at the time, and my back was bothering me, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. I wasn't doing anything unusual. So I go in there, and he's like, well, let's put you up on the table and measure you. As he gets me out on the table with a tape measure, he's going around, doing all this stuff, and he says, your right leg is ½ inch longer than your left leg. Put a heel insert in there. I'm like, wow. I get up and leave the office, and I'm cured. It's mind-boggling. And I'd come in there with a sinus infection I couldn't get rid of. And I get all worried about it. Oh, my God, they're going to have to operate and straighten out my septum. What am I going to do? Oh, no, I can't get rid of this thing. Get in there and talk to him. And he's like, oh, take hot showers, breathe deep with the steam, and stick your head over the tea kettle. Here's some samples of decongestants, and I'm cured. And this was so practical. He's not sending me down to MRIs and feeding on the misery, we better check this out. He's like, no, let's sit here. We're going to get through this, And it would burst that bubble that I was getting in my head, the negative energy knots, wherever they were coming from, telling me, oh, you got worries and anxieties, and tie them into these little symptoms, And the guy would, perform his magic, and I'd pop out the door of his office going, wow, what happened? This guy just completely did the whole number on me, and did it. I was really sad to see the guy go out of, practice and not having any more coming back for him. I'd like to start wrapping this up we can take a break here in just a little bit. What I'd like to do is I'm going to come back, do some more on the talking bit, and I want to do a little thing. I think the lovely Irish lady we have here, where's Tess at? Oh, there she is. Might give me a hand doing something for just a minute there. And then I'd like to save maybe the last half hour, see how much time we got left for, especially for the new folks. Anybody who's here doesn't know much about, if you want to ask questions about the talk or about me personally, or if you got questions about TAT or the farm or Mr. Rose, if I can't answer them, there's lots of capable guys around here, I'm sure who can.
What does TAT stand for?
Truth and transmission. I want to pass these little things out. Everybody take one. And during the break, if we can pass these out and keep going. I want everybody this is not going to be a test or quiz or anything like that. What I want you to do is write down two little, what I call letting goes. Two little things on there. I want to let go of something. I want to let go of negative mood I get in when I have to listen to guys talk about spiritual work. I want to let go of, the problems I'm having with a certain person in my family. You don't have to put any details. Don't sign your name. You can even just, write down anything you pretty much want if you can't verbalize it. Or you can even put a little prayer down if you want. And you can write down a couple of little prayers. Something you might want to have happen for the weekend. Or anything you just want to let go of that you want to take in there that you've been thinking about. Put it out into manifestation so you've got it out clear. Write a little piece down about it. Put it on the paper. Later on, we'll take these things and see if we can get rid of them en masse. So we can go ahead and take our little break now. I think we're scheduled for 15 minutes. We'll come back in just a little bit and we'll do the second half. So thanks a lot, folks.